Thursday night's daily fantasy baseball slate is one of the more fun ones I can remember over the most recent couple of weeks because you get options. We've got two elite studs going head to head with Carlos Rodon facing Corbin Burns. Obviously, both those guys, awesome options for daily fantasy, but also there's a value play I like quite a bit. So to me, it sets up well there, but also there are stacks we can build around for today, feel good about, and I think high upside stacks too. So we're going to have a lot of points on the slate, and that does make things sometimes somewhat frustrating for sure because you need a lot of points to take down a tournament, but I think we've got guys who can get us there, and I think that it's a predictable kind of ceiling slate. So let's dive on in, break it down, and get you set for what should be a fun night of DFS. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberfire.com. My name is Jim Sanas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberfire.com, here to break down Thursday's 11-game main slate with lock set for 7:05 p.m. Eastern for today. And no real weather to note for today. The wind is in at Wrigley Field, so if you want to bump down bats for the Cubs and the Mets, probably shouldn't be stacking there anyway, given the pitchers who are going there. But that's kind of it. Pretty clear slate overall, which just kind of, again, paves the way for it to live up to the billing of being one of the more fun slates we've had so far this year. We'll break down the pitching preview and stacks and much more in just 1 second. But first, a reminder, make sure you are subscribed to the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Our NASCAR podcast for New Hampshire, potentially going up today. Have to decide when I want to post it, recording it later on. So that should be up either today or tomorrow on the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. And of course, we got UFC, PGA, MLB podcasts whenever you need them. So search for the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. This baseball season, turn Ks into cash and big hits into big wins with FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. With great promotions every day, a safe and secure app, and the ability to get paid fast, there is no better place to bet America's pastime than on America's #1 sportsbook. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app and sign up today to get started with your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. First online real money wager only. Refund issued as non-withdrawable free bets that expire 14 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. In Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. In Connecticut, 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Louisiana, 1-877-770-STOP. In New York, 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Tennessee, call the red line at 1-800-889-9789. In Wyoming, 1-800-522-4700. Or in West Virginia, 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Pitching preview, it's a doozy for this Thursday slate. Corbin Burns is the highest salaried pitcher on FanDuel, checking in at $10,300. We got Carlos Rodon facing Burns at $10,900. Kyle Wright is $10,500. Framber Valdez is $10,300. Kevin Gausman checks in at $10,100 with Nestor Cortez at $9,900. Martin Perez, $98,000. Luis Castillo facing the Yankees, $95,000. Tristan McKenzie gets the Tigers. He's $93,000. Johnny Cueto is $92,000 with Sonny Gray facing Cueto at $9,000. Then Carlos Carrasco, Tyler Anderson, Marco Gonzalez, and Drew Rasmussen are the others at $8,000 or higher. And I will say, our value play, not listed in that discussion. So we'll talk about him below $8,000 later on. But first, let's talk about this pitching duel between Rodon and Burns. They got to be the top two guys. And I don't really care which way you order them. Let's start here with the guy at home. That is Rodon. He seems like he's over whatever was holding him back over the spring, which means we probably need to go back to viewing Rodon as being the elite level starter that he is and was earlier on this year. And it isn't just the results last time out. Rodon had 12 strikeouts in 9 innings. It's that he was throwing lava out there. The velocity on his fastball was 96.3 miles per hour. That is the highest it's been since June 12th. It is the second highest it has been since May 21st. So the velocity was good, and Rodon was feeling it because he just kept on chucking that here. He used his four-seam fastball on 70% of his pitches, and it worked. Again, 12 strikeouts, 22.3% swing and strike rate. If they can't hit it, just keep throwing it, and that's what Rodon did. For the full season now, Rodon has a 3.10 skill interactive ERA with a 31% strikeout rate. He's facing the Brewers here. Their active roster has a 24% strikeout rate versus lefties, and that is a mark that Rodon can handle. I've got him projected at 7.9 strikeouts, which is the second highest mark on the slate, trailing just the guy on the other side of this game. So I think Rodon is elite. I think he's in a good matchup. He's at home. It is a very cool, very good park for pitching. I am fully in on Carlos Rodon here. Gonna give him a slight edge over Burns. Very slight edge. Let's talk about Burns right now, facing the Giants on the road. Not the world's worst matchup, but it's also not the best. So, it's kind of a middling one. I'm fine enough with him to be high on him here and put him second by a hair behind Rodon. Most of that is because of what Burns does himself. For the full season, he has a 2.75 skill interactive ERA with a 32% strikeout rate, and both those numbers are the best marks on the slate. The 35% hard hit rate that Burns has allowed is also better than league average. If you can get strikeouts without letting up a lot of hard contact, you're going to be a very fun play for DFS. And shocker, that's what Burns has been for a pretty long time now. We've seen the full impact of that this year, where his ERA is 2.20, his expected ERA is 2.68. Burns has hit double-digit strikeouts in 6 out of 17 starts, which includes 2 of his past 4. He's going deep in games, so he checks every box. I find no reason to be low on Corbin Burns. I can't. I just, I can't find anything. It's not the best matchup again, but don't really care. I think that, to me, Burns and Rodon are the top 2 guys. I don't care how you order them. I'll put Rodon a hair higher personally, but they're both great. So pick your poison. I like both a lot. I think they're the top 2 guys and well worth the salaries of 11.3 and 10.9 for those 2 guys. We do have Framber Valdez in the mid-range. We've got some other guys who are pretty enticing. But for the value play, I want to dip all the way down to $7,600. That's where we get Keegan Thompson. And Keegan Thompson's facing the Mets. And they're a pretty frisky offense. Not a fun one to target, but I think that Thompson has proven himself enough where we can use him here. It's actually 74, not 76, but either way, saving a lot of salary there. Thompson has a new slider that he's been using for his past 5 starts. Ben Clemens wrote a good story on that for Fangraphs at the start of this month, detailing what that pitch has been doing. It's not that the slider itself is great, but it helps amplify the value of his other pitches, and I think that is important to consider too. Just because the slider itself is not ideal, not perfect, doesn't mean we should discount the improvements he has made. And it's been working beautifully so far. Thompson in 5 starts with that slider has a 3.04 skill interactive ERA with a 31% strikeout rate. Also not walking a lot of guys. And I think what's important to me facing the Mets, because they are a tough matchup, is that he's faced the Braves, the Red Sox, and then he faced the Dodgers in LA the most recent start. He had 9 strikeouts there. He allowed no earned runs across 5 1/3 innings. To me, that's what allows us to use him here. He has a new pitch. His numbers with that new pitch are very, very good, and he has done that even against very tough competition. So yeah, the Mets are good. They got a 110 WRC plus against righties. They don't strike out a whole lot, but I have Thompson projected for 6.9 strikeouts tonight. That's high enough for me to feel really good about him despite the matchup here. So Thompson, I'm going to buy in. I think that from a strikeout prop perspective, he's looking pretty fun. I saw over 4.5 at plus 130 out there today. So I think you want to dabble in that as well. Thompson, really fun play for DFS at 74. I will probably be higher on Burns and Rodon just because I think they've got better odds of hitting double-digit strikeouts, but Thompson will be in there too. I think he's pretty fun. Now, let's talk about stacks. I said that both the pitching and stack components are fun for today. Let's lay out why. Starting with the Braves, because the Braves are facing Anibal Sanchez, making his season debut. What a welcome present it is to face the Braves your first time out. Good fun for Anibal Sanchez. And I will stack against him here. Sanchez making his first big league start since 2020. He didn't really light it up in his rehab starts that he made. He made 3 starts in AAA. He had a 22% strikeout rate there with a 50% fly ball rate. His ERA was 4.26 with a 5.67 xFIP. That's pretty much in line with what Sanchez did back in 2020 in the big leagues. There, his skill interactive ERA was 5.03. His ERA was 6.62. Didn't get a lot of ground balls. It's possible that he can outperform those numbers, but He's also a 38-year-old who struggled this most recent time we saw him. That was almost 2 years ago, and he's coming off an injury. I think that's a setup we can stack against, and the Braves grade out really well tonight as a result. Within the Brave stacks, I know Eddie Rosario went deep last night. Still a little bit skeptical of him as far as a component within these stacks. We're up to about 10 days now. Overall, the hard hit rate is on 33%. Again, a lot of fly balls, as usual with Eddie Rosario. Not striking out a ton. He's $2,500. I think that I have more confidence in him now, given the home run last night, because it means he can smash a ball when he needs to. But, if he were to sit for Adam Duvall, wouldn't totally break my heart. I think that Duvall at 26 would be definitely a play for me if he were to be in there. Rosario, I will use. I'm just worried that maybe the home run last night, not fully indicative of where he's at right now. So Duvall, Rosario, guys like that at the bottom of the order of the Braves might be necessary if you're going with Rodon or Burns. And I probably will use him, but I don't want to make him a core play given the overall middling numbers he has had, not just since he came back recently, but also for the entire season before the injury as well. For the second stack, let's talk here about the Astros. And if you had told me a couple weeks ago that I get the Astros facing Reed Detmers tonight, I would be salivating because he was really struggling. And I do still like this stack, but Detmers has made me question that. So let's talk through everything at play for this stack. Detmers has struggled since he had that no-hitter. And honestly, the no-hitter, had 2 strikeouts there, so it wasn't really an overpowering performance either. But it seems like when he got sent down to AAA, Detmers made some changes. In the one AAA start, Detmers had 14 strikeouts. That got my attention, and I wanted to see if he made any changes. And we finally got some, pitch data on him for his most recent start, and he very much did. In the first start back up, Detmers threw his slider 39.6% of the time. That was just his second time throwing that pitch more than 30% this year. It's also the fourth time he's topped 20% with that pitch. So he was throwing it more, but he was also throwing it a lot harder. His average velocity on that slider was 86.5 miles per hour. It was 83.3 for the season before he got demoted. It was also getting more dip. It was less of a sweeping pitch, more of a crisp breaking ball. And it worked. It seems like it may have helped his other pitches too. So that's why I'm a bit hesitant to stack the Astros here. But that game was against the Orioles. They did still make some hard contact. And now there is tape on that pitch, whereas there was not outside of AAA previously. That's why I'm still willing to stack here. There is extra risk involved, but I believe the ceiling is still very good. So I will stack the Astros, but keep in mind, it's not as much of a slam dunk as it may have seemed before Detmers got demoted down to AAA. It does help here that the offense for the Astros is pretty good against sliders as a whole. They do take a hit with no Yordan Alvarez, but they're still pretty solid. Of the guys still on the active roster, Kyle Tucker, Alex Bregman, and Yuli Gurriel have the best results against sliders this year. Jose Altuve and Jeremy Pena, both above average as well. Tucker is a lefty, as is Detmers, but Tucker still does really well against lefties, just doesn't have the same stolen base upside, which does matter for sure. But I think that he will be a quality tournament play here. And I think the Astros still grade out well, despite the fact they are now riskier than they would have been previously. The third stack is probably going to be the Jays. I just don't know who they're facing. So we'll talk about them and things to watch. We'll spend less time on it, but the Jays probably going to be a very, very good stack for today, given that the entire Astros team is hanging out in Kansas City while the rest of the team is facing the Jays. We'll touch on them later. But the next stack up where we know the opposing starter is the Guardians. And I do like them a decent amount here. They're facing Elvin Rodriguez, who is coming back up from AAA. We saw Rodriguez in the majors earlier on this year, and he struggled as a starter, thus the demotion back down to AAA. In 4 starts, he had a 4.81 skill interactive ERA with a 51% hard hit rate and a lot of fly balls. All of that meshes well with the data we saw from Rodriguez in the minors. Based on his minor league profile, that's what you would have expected in the majors. I didn't see any massive deviations from Rodriguez when he went back down to the minors, similar to what we saw with Detmers. So I'm not super enthusiastic about stacking Cleveland ever because they're not the world's most powerful team, but I will be okay with them here and rank them number 3 until we find out who the Jays start or the Jays are facing, which will probably put them above the Guardians and push the Guardians down to 4th. One of the guys who is very interesting here is Nolan Jones. He has an interesting profile. His ISO in AAA was 189, which is just, it's fine. It's not great, especially once you adjust for the fact it's AAA. He hit more ground balls than he'd like down there, but that wasn't as true last year. His sample in AAA this year was not super robust, about 106 or so plate appearances. So I'm not too worried about the minor league profile. It seems like he's smoking everything. Like his barrel rate is about like 30%. He's got 4 barrels already in 24 plate appearances, which is stupid. He strikes out more than you want, but like outside of that, kind of gives off like a Juan Soto, Vlad Guerrero vibe. I'm not saying he's that caliber of hitter because their strikeout rates matter a lot, but from a, you wish he lofted a bit more, but at least he's hitting the crap out of the ball. So when he does make contact, it's potentially going to do damage if it's not a home run. So Jones, the profile, not what I was expecting, I guess, when I looked at his numbers, but still a guy I'll use. I think that can work despite the strikeouts and despite a higher ground ball rate that you would ideally like. Let's dig into things to watch for today. If you're doing a healthy number of entries, I don't think that Framber Valdez is totally off the radar. He's facing the Angels, which, you know, an offense that will strike out, and they did so 13 times against Valdez 2 starts ago. He's had 7 strikeouts and some others as well, throwing more curveballs, which seems to be aiding his upside. The familiarity, given that the Angels did just see Valdez, that does hurt him. This game is also on the road, which hurts him. That's why I definitely go Rodon, definitely go Burns, and Thompson above him as well. But if you want a mid-range play or middling guy we can feel good about, Valdez, I think, would be the primary target there. Talking about the Blue Jays here, I don't know who the Royal starter will be. Typically, I just check Twitter, but Twitter was down Thursday morning, so I'm on my own. I got nothing. It could be Jackson Kowar. If it is, the Jays might be the top stack of the night. Like, they're up there at least. They'd be on par with the Braves, on par with the Astros. I think they'd be at least 2 if Kowar starts. It could be a AAA guy, in which case they're probably a good play then too. So the Jays are very likely to be a really good quality stack. I just don't know who they're facing. So I'd be high on the Jays today. Just check back who they're facing later on. The Dodgers are kind of a tough case. They're facing Dakota Hudson, who has his issues, but gets a lot of ground balls, which is annoying for stacking. The Dodgers are a good offense, and we've seen Hudson have some issues recently. So I think I'm okay with them, not actively talking you out of them, but they would be behind the Guardians for me, which means they're also behind the Astros, they're behind the Braves, and they're behind the Jays. So the Dodgers 5th at best in terms of stacking, despite an okay matchup with Dakota Hudson. Let's go to some dinger calls for today. I was kicking myself last night that I didn't go with Jake Cronenworth. I talked about how, I picked him earlier on this week. Didn't pick, I don't want to pick him again. I should have last night. So my bad. Hopefully you didn't listen to me on that one. You went with Cronenworth anyway, but let's run it back for today. The boring one will be Jose Ramirez facing Rodriguez. So much hard contact, so many fly balls. Ramirez, very good hitter. So we'll go with Jose Ramirez as the dinger call for the boring one for today. For the fun one, I kind of want to talk about Michael Harris. Michael Harris of the Braves. From a DFS perspective, his salary is pretty high. $3,500 for a guy who's probably not going to bat all that high in the order, but like, I feel like he's more fun than Eddie Rosario and than Adam Duvall. I kind of wish they'd move him up in the order. He's got a 252 ISO versus righties this year in the big leagues, across 117 plate appearances, a lot of hard contact, not the biggest fly ball rate, but he's kind of fun. So the salary's high, which is why I can't put him above Rosario or Duvall in terms of like DFS, but for dinger calls, I can do it. So the home run calls for today, Jose Ramirez and Michael Harris of the Braves. That is all that we have here for today on the Solo Shot. Again, fascinating, fun slate. You got a value play we can like, 2 legitimate studs we can feel good about, some high-quality stacks. It's a multi-entry kind of night for me. Sometimes I'm a big single entry guy. Typically I am, but we're going to have some fun tonight. We'll do some multi-entry and see what goes down. Need a lot of points, but I think we can get a lot of points via the guys available to us today. Do not forget to subscribe to the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, etc., etc., etc. You can find us all there. Hit subscribe, and if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review. If you've got any questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineups. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow to break down Friday's slate. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.